The dean called me before the bank did, and the first thing she asked was not whether I had paid my daughter's tuition. She asked whether my girls were standing beside me when I signed their futures away. I was on a rooftop outside Dayton, Ohio, tightening a loose HVAC panel with damp gloves when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. The screen said Brookhaven University, Financial Aid Office. I almost ignored it because Ava had already been accepted and Sophie's early college program had just mailed her packet, and I thought it was one of those harmless calls about deadlines or missing forms. But the woman on the line did not sound like a receptionist. She said, "Mr. Ellison, this is Dean Caroline Brooks. I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer carefully." The wind hit the roof so hard I turned my back to it. I laughed once and said, "If this is about Ava's deposit, I'm sending it Friday." There was a pause. Not a normal office pause. A pause where someone had just checked a file and did not like what they saw. Then she said, "This is not about a late deposit." I remember looking down at the parking lot, at the white service van with rust near the wheel well, and thinking about every Saturday I had worked, every Christmas bonus I had not spent, every side job I had taken because I wanted my girls to open college letters without seeing fear on my face. That money was never just money. It was Ava's first dorm room. It was Sophie's summer lab fee. It was 12 years of me telling them, "We'll figure it out," while I quietly figured it out alone. 2 nights earlier, those letters had been on our kitchen table in 2 blue envelopes, the kind with thick paper and gold seals that made the room feel brighter. Ava had held hers against her chest like it might disappear if she set it down. Sophie had pretended she was not crying, then cried anyway when I hugged her. Vanessa, my wife, smiled at both of them, but her eyes kept drifting back to the envelopes. Not to the girls, to the envelopes. At the time, I told myself she was overwhelmed. We had argued about money before, and lately she had been saying the college account made her feel trapped. I thought she meant trapped by pressure, by the fact that our daughters were growing up faster than either of us wanted to admit. So I ignored the way she folded the corner of Ava's letter and smoothed it flat with her thumb. I ignored the way she asked, "Are you sure all of it has to go to school?" I ignored it because that night was supposed to belong to our girls. On the roof, Dean Brooks lowered her voice. "Mr. Ellison, have you recently authorized any withdrawal from your daughter's education fund through a third-party advisor?" My hand tightened around the phone. "No," I said. "I haven't touched that account in months." Another pause. Then papers shifted on her end. And were Ava and Sophie present when any education use consent was completed? I stopped hearing the traffic below. I stopped feeling the cold. "They're minors," I said. "Ava just turned 18 last month, and Sophie is 16. Why would they be completing anything?" Dean Brooks did not answer right away, and that silence scared me more than the question. Behind me, my foreman shouted that lunch was starting, but I could not move. All I could see were those 2 blue envelopes on our kitchen table, Vanessa's thumb pressing down the crease, and my daughters laughing because they still believed the hard part was over. Dean Brooks said, "Mr. Ellison, I can't discuss everything over the phone, but there is a document in front of me with your name, your wife's number, and both of your daughters listed as having confirmed something they may not understand." I swallowed hard. "Confirmed what?" She took one breath. Then she said, "Can you come to my office, and can you bring the blue acceptance letters?" I left the rooftop without eating lunch. My foreman, Eddie, saw my face and asked if one of the girls was hurt because that was the only thing that ever made me forget my tools. I told him it was a school emergency, which was close enough to the truth to keep my voice steady. The whole drive home, Dean Brooks' last sentence kept repeating under the engine noise. Bring the blue acceptance letters. Not bring a bank statement. Not bring identification. Bring the letters. That meant whatever she had seen was tied to Ava and Sophie, not just to the account. When I pulled into our driveway, Vanessa's gray SUV was gone, but that was not strange yet. She worked part-time at a dental office and sometimes ran errands between shifts. What was strange was the kitchen. 2 nights earlier, the table had been covered with takeout containers, college brochures, and Sophie's glitter pen because she had circled the word congratulations like she was afraid it would vanish. Now the table was bare except for one blue envelope. Ava's. Sophie's envelope was missing. I stood there for almost a minute before I touched it. Ava's letter was still inside, but the corner Vanessa had creased was folded again, sharper this time, like someone had used it as a marker. Under the letter was a sticky note in Vanessa's handwriting. It said, "Mark, do not punish them because you are scared." I read it 3 times. The words made no sense, and then they made too much sense. Before I could call her, Ava came in through the back door wearing her Brookhaven sweatshirt, the one Vanessa bought the same day the acceptance email arrived. She stopped when she saw me holding the envelope. "Mom said you would act like this," she said. I lowered the paper. "Like what?" Ava crossed her arms, trying to look older than 18 and only managing to look hurt. "Like you were the only one who worked for it. Like it was your money, not our future." That sentence landed harder than any bank alert could have. "Ava, what did your mother tell you?" She looked toward the hallway, where Sophie stood half-hidden, listening. "She said you changed your mind after you saw the real cost. She said you wanted to hold the fund until we picked cheaper schools." Sophie stepped into the room with red eyes and her phone pressed against her palm. She did not accuse me. That was worse. She looked like she wanted me to explain a story she already believed. I set Ava's letter on the table, carefully, because if my hands shook they would both see it. "Girls, I have not withdrawn a dime. I have not canceled anything. Dean Brooks called me because something was filed in your names." Ava blinked, and her anger slipped for 1 second. "Our names. That is what I need to find out." Sophie's phone buzzed. She looked down, turned the screen away, and said nothing. Ava noticed too. "Is that Mom?" Sophie swallowed. "She told me not to talk about it." The room changed after that. Not loudly. No shouting. No slam doors. Just a quiet shift, like a floorboard giving way under a rug. I asked Sophie what Vanessa had told her not to discuss, but she shook her head and said, "She said if I make it worse, Ava might lose Brookhaven." Ava's face went pale. That was when I understood the trap was not only financial. Vanessa had placed my daughters between fear and loyalty, then handed me the blame. I picked up the remaining blue envelope, slid it into a folder, and asked Ava where Sophie's letter was. Sophie answered before Ava could. "Mom took it this morning," she whispered. "She said the school needed proof." Then my phone buzzed again, this time with an email for Brookhaven. The subject line read, "Student consent verification attached." I opened it at the table, with both girls watching, and the attachment showed a signature line for Sophie that no 16-year-old should have been asked to sign in the first place. Not without a parent present. The signature did not look like Sophie's. My younger daughter had a looping S, the kind she practiced on notebook covers when she was bored, but the one on the form was stiff, slanted, and too careful, like someone copying a shape instead of writing a name. Ava leaned over my shoulder and went quiet. Sophie whispered, "I did not sign that." I believed her before she finished saying it. The attachment showed Brookhaven's student consent verification, a dated acknowledgement, and a checkbox beside the words Voluntary Education Fund Redirection. Redirection. That was the first word that made my stomach turn, because it did not sound like a missed payment or a clerical error. It sounded like money had been moved on purpose. I clicked the link at the bottom of the email and logged into the 529 account from the kitchen table. The girl stood behind me while the page loaded, and for those few seconds, I still had one small hope that the balance would prove everybody wrong. It did not. The number that had taken me 12 years to build was almost gone. Not reduced. Not frozen. Gone, except for a few $100s and some loose change. Above the transaction history, in green letters that looked almost cheerful, was one word: authorized. Ava put her hand over her mouth. Sophie backed away from the table like the screen had accused her personally. I wanted to yell Vanessa's name so loudly the neighbors would hear it, but I knew that was what she had prepared them for. The angry father, the controlling father, the man who could not handle losing control. So I did the hardest thing I could do in that moment. I stayed calm. I downloaded every document before the session timed out. There were 3 files attached to the withdrawal: parent approval, student consent, and advisor verification. Parent approval had my name typed under Vanessa's, but the actual authorization came from her phone number. Student consent had Ava's name entered with a digital confirmation code, and Sophie's name had that fake signature. Advisor verification listed someone named Clint Avery from Avery Educational Planning. Ava frowned when she heard the name. Mom talked to him in the driveway last week, she said. She said he was helping us get more aid. Did you meet him? I asked. Ava shook her head. Sophie hugged herself. I heard his voice on speaker. He told Mom that parents panic when daughters grow up. That sentence was too polished to be casual. It sounded like a line a man used when he wanted a mother to believe she was being brave instead of reckless. I searched Clint Avery on my phone. His website appeared immediately. All smiling stock photos and phrases about freedom, transition, and alternative college funding. But there was no license number, no school affiliation, no physical campus office, only a suite address in a strip mall outside Cincinnati. Then another detail appeared in the transaction history. The money had not gone directly to Brookhaven or to any college. It had gone to a temporary education holding account managed through Avery Educational Planning. Ava read the line and said, "So Mom did not pay my deposit?" Her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. I could not soften the answer without lying. "No," I said. "Not from what this shows." That was when Sophie finally unlocked her phone. She had a message from Vanessa sent 6 minutes earlier, even though none of us had called her yet. It said, "If your father opens the account, do not argue with him. Just remember, I did what you were too young to understand." Sophie stared at those words until tears filled her eyes. Vanessa had known exactly when the account would be opened. Someone had alerted her. I looked back at the advisor verification file, and at the bottom, under reviewer contact, was Dean Brooks' office number with one additional note I had not noticed before. Family requested father not be notified until transfer clears. Then the 529 portal refreshed by itself, and a red banner appeared across the top. Access limited pending identity review by morning. I did not sleep that night. The girls went upstairs, but nobody closed the door all the way, as if every sound in the house might become another clue. I sat in the living room with my laptop on my knees, the blue envelope folder beside me, and the red identity review banner still burned into my eyes. By 6 in the morning, the 529 portal would not let me in at all. It said verification required by account administrator. That sounded official, but the timing felt personal. Someone had moved fast enough to lock me out before I could finish reading the trail. At 7:15, Ava came downstairs in jeans and her Brookhaven sweatshirt, holding Sophie's missing acceptance letter. My breath caught before I understood what I was seeing. "Where did you get that?" I asked. Ava looked embarrassed. Sophie found it in Mom's laundry basket, folded inside one of her sweaters. Sophie followed her down, quieter than usual, and said, "I took a picture before Ava brought it here." That was the first time since the dean's call that either of them had done something with me instead of against me. I put Sophie's letter into the folder with Ava's. The object felt heavier now, not because of the paper, but because both girls had chosen to hand it back to me. I drove to the Cincinnati address listed under Avery Educational Planning with Ava in the passenger seat and Sophie in the back. The suite was not an office. It was a mailbox store between a tanning salon and a tax preparer, with a bell on the door and shelves of padded envelopes behind the counter. I asked for Clint Avery. The clerk glanced at the girls, then at the folder in my hand. "We only receive mail for that box," she said. "No appointments, no clients." Ava's face tightened. He told Mom he had a college advisory office. The clerk slid a sign-in sheet away from the counter like she had suddenly remembered privacy laws. "I cannot give you customer information." I nodded and turned to leave, but Sophie stopped near a corkboard by the exit. On it was a flyer for Avery Educational Planning, the same logo as the portal document, except one line at the bottom was different. It said Family Transition Funding Solutions. Not college planning, not scholarships. Transition. I took a picture of the flyer, and the clerk did not stop me. In a parking lot, Ava read the phrase out loud and finally sounded angry at someone other than me. Transition to what? Before I could answer, Dean Brooks called again. This time, her voice had lost the careful distance of a school official. "Mr. Ellison, are your daughters with you?" she asked. I said yes. "Then do not let them sign anything else from their mother, from Mr. Avery, or from anyone claiming to protect their college choices." Ava looked over at me. Sophie leaned forward between the seats. Dean Brooks continued. "Brookhaven has placed an administrative hold on the file. That protects Ava's seat for now, but it also means I need to see you today." I told her we could be there by noon. She said, bring the letters, the portal files, and any communication your daughters received. Then she added something that made my hands tighten around steering wheel. There is a second consent packet. For a second, no one in the car spoke. Second, I asked. The first one redirected the education funds, she said. The second one appears to release Brookhaven from contacting the students directly. Sophie whispered, why would Mom not want them to call us? Dean Brooks answered softly, that is what concerns me. At noon, we walked into Brookhaven's financial aid building, past families taking campus tour photos under red brick arches. Ava stared at the sidewalks like they belonged to someone else now. Dean Brooks met us herself. In her office, she placed a sealed transcript face down beside the blue letters. Before I open this, she said, you need to know Vanessa called here 43 minutes before the money cleared, and she did not sound frightened at all. Dean Brooks did not open the transcript right away. She let the sentence sit between us until Ava reached for Sophie's hand under the edge of the desk. The office was warmer than the hallway, filled with framed campus photos and shelves of policy binders, but it felt like a room built for bad news. The two blue acceptance letters lay beside the sealed transcript, and for the first time, they did not look like celebration. They looked like evidence. Dean Brooks turned her monitor so we could see a screen headed Administrative Tuition Hold. This is the only reason Ava has not lost her place, she said. I froze the deposit deadline this morning. Ava exhaled so sharply that Sophie squeezed her fingers. That was the first small mercy of the day. The girls still had a doorway open. Then the dean slid a second document across the desk, and the mercy thinned out. This packet was submitted through our family portal last night, she said. It requests that all direct contact about Ava's enrollment go through Vanessa Ellison and Avery Educational Planning. My eyes moved to the signature block. My name was typed there again, but below was a digital confirmation tag, not a signature. Dean Brooks pointed to it with capped pen. The system shows it came from a device previously used to access your household financial aid profile. I thought of the old tablet in our kitchen drawer, the one Vanessa used for grocery orders and school forms, the one my daughters borrowed when their phones were charging. So it could look like any of us, I said. Exactly, she answered, which is why the call matters. She opened the transcript. The first pages were routine, all office greetings and verification prompts. But Vanessa's words changed the room. She told Brookhaven that Mark was becoming unstable about tuition. She said the girls were overwhelmed and needed their mother to shield them from pressure. She said Clint Avery was guiding the family through a responsible funding transition. Ava's face hardened with every line. Sophie looked smaller with each one. I waited for rage to arrive in me, but what came instead was a clean, cold sadness. Vanessa had not just spent money. She had prepared a version of me that strangers could reject before I ever walked in. Dean Brooks flipped to the third page. Here, she said. Vanessa had asked whether Brookhaven could note that the father should not be contacted until after the account transfer finalized. The staff member asked why. Vanessa answered, because if he gets involved before everything clears, he will confuse the girls and stop them from choosing what they already agreed to. Ava stood up so fast the chair legs scraped the carpet. I never agreed to anything, she said. Dean Brooks did not flinch. That is why I asked you here. Then she played a short audio verification from the call. Only a few seconds, just enough for us to hear Vanessa's voice say Ava's date of birth, Sophie's middle name, and the last 4 digits of the education account. Sophie covered her mouth. She used us like passwords, she whispered. That broke something in Ava. Not loudly. She sat back down and stared at the blue letters, as if she had been blaming the wrong person from the beginning and hated herself for how easily it happened. I put one hand on her shoulder, and this time she did not pull away. Dean Brooks placed a yellow hold slip on top of the transcript. I am extending Ava's deposit deadline 10 business days and referring this to compliance. But there is a problem. I looked up. What problem? She turned the final page around. It showed the advisor verification stamp from Avery Educational Planning. Beside Clint Avery's name was a contact email, but the domain was not his website. It ended with brookhavensupport.org, close enough to look official and wrong enough to make Dean Brooks pale. "This is not a Brookhaven domain," she said, "and whoever created it received copies of every form before we did." Then her office phone began ringing from that domain. Dean Brooks stared at the ringing phone like it had become part of the fraud on her desk. The caller identification showed no name, only the same fake domain written across the internal screen, brookhavensupport.org. She did not pick it up immediately. Instead, she pressed a button that sent the call to recorded speaker and looked at Ava and Sophie. "You are not required to say anything," she told them. "This is my office now." The voice that came through was not Vanessa. It was a man, smooth and impatient. "Dean Brooks, this is Clint Avery. I understand there is confusion around the Ellison family file. Vanessa has authorized me to resolve it." Dean Brooks kept her voice flat. "This is a university financial aid office. We do not resolve student consent issues through unauthorized third parties." Clint gave a small laugh, the kind men use when they believe politeness is already surrender. "Respectfully, Dean, the mother has full family authority here. The father is creating stress, and the girls already made their preference clear." Ava leaned forward, shaking her head, but I raised one hand gently, asking her to let the call continue. Dean Brooks asked, "Where did the student consent originate?" Clint answered too quickly. "From a family device." "Which family device?" Another pause, shorter but sharper. "The household tablet." Sophie whispered, "He knows about the tablet." Dean Brooks wrote that down. "And how would you know that, Clint?" The speaker went quiet long enough for the office air to feel heavy. Then he said, "Vanessa explained the household setup." That was the first time his confidence slipped. Dean Brooks clicked open a side panel on her monitor and showed us the access history. There were 3 timestamps. One from our kitchen tablet, one for Vanessa's phone, and one from an internet address traced to a business center in Cincinnati, less than a mile from the mailbox store we had just visited. Clint had not simply advised Vanessa. He had touched the file himself. "Ava saw it before I did." "That is him," she said. "He submitted it." Dean Brooks nodded once, but she did not smile. "That is what compliance will determine." Clint spoke again, louder now. "Dean, I will be careful. If you delay this, Brookhaven may be interfering with a family decision." "No," Dean Brooks said. "If I release it, Brookhaven may be participating in a fraudulent student authorization." The word fraudulent changed the room. It was the first time someone with authority had said out loud what I had been afraid to name. Sophie began crying silently, not because she was confused anymore, but because the confusion was leaving. That was somehow harder. Dean Brooks ended the call after telling Clint all future contact had to go through compliance. Then she opened a secure report template and began filling it out while we sat there. Not dramatically, not like television, just slow, exact, and official. Every sentence she typed seemed to put one piece of my daughter's future back where it belonged. She asked Ava to confirm she had not authorized the fund transfer. Ava said no. She asked Sophie if the signature was hers. Sophie wiped her face and said, "No, and I want that written down." I looked at her then and saw a child trying to sound brave in a room full of adults who had failed to protect her. Dean Brooks printed 2 temporary protection notices. Ava's gave her 10 business days to secure the deposit. Sophie's flagged her file against any outside release request. Then Dean Brooks turned to me. "Mark, I need to ask one more question. Did Vanessa ever have access to your voicemail password?" I almost said no. Then I remembered last winter when my phone screen cracked and Vanessa called the carrier for me because I was driving between service calls. I told her the code once. Dean Brooks slid a final page across the desk. It was a transcript request made under my name, authorizing Brookhaven to accept verbal approval from a saved caller. The request had been submitted yesterday, and the attached audio file was labeled Father Approval Pending Today. The label on the audio file made the office feel smaller than it was. Father Approval Pending Today. Ava stared at the words like they belonged to a stranger. Sophie looked at my face, not the screen, as if she needed to know whether any part of me recognized it. I did not. Dean Brooks clicked the file once, then stopped before playing it. "I'm not going to let this room hear something that may have been created from a private message without first confirming consent," she said. That sentence told me more than the file name did. She already suspected someone had taken my voice from somewhere else. My throat tightened as I remembered the cracked phone. Vanessa, standing in our kitchen last winter, telling the carrier representative that her husband was driving and could not answer security questions. I had handed her the code because marriage makes some dangers look like help. Dean Brooks asked if I had any saved voicemails from around that time. I opened my phone and scrolled, but before I found anything, Sophie stepped forward. "I have one," she said. Ava turned to her. "One what?" Sophie pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket with both hands. "A voicemail from Mom." I did not delete it. Her voice shook, but she did not hide the screen this time. "She called me yesterday during study hall. I let it go to voicemail because I was mad at her." Dean Brooks asked Sophie if she wanted the message included in the file. Sophie looked at me, then at Ava, then at the blue letters on the desk. "Yes," she said. "I want everyone to hear what she told me to do." Dean Brooks connected the phone to a speaker. Vanessa's voice filled the office, calm and sweet in the way she sounded when she wanted obedience to feel like comfort. "Sophie, honey, if anyone from Brookhaven asks, just say you understood the transfer. Do not let your father make you nervous. He already agreed to the plan, but he may pretend he did not because he hates being left out." Sophie's eyes shut. Vanessa continued, "This is temporary. Once Clint finishes the funding transition, Ava will be fine, and you will thank me when you are older." There was a rustle, then the part that made Ava sit down slowly. "And please do not tell your sister yet." Ava gets emotional when money is mentioned. The message ended with a soft beep. No one moved. Dean Brooks wrote 3 words on her pad. Coached minor statement. Sophie wiped her cheeks with her sleeve and said, "I thought if I played it, Ava would lose her place." Ava reached for her so fast the chair rolled backward. "No," she said. "You were trying to protect me." That was the first time my girls held each other since Vanessa left, and the sight of it hurt in a way that also healed something. Dean Brooks asked permission to compare the voicemail metadata with the portal activity. Sophie agreed. Within minutes, the timeline appeared on the monitor. Vanessa called Sophie at 2:14 in the afternoon. The second consent packet was uploaded at 2:29. The fake father approval request was created at 2:41. The education holding account received its final routing confirmation at 2:53. 15 minutes. 12 minutes. Another 12. It was not panic. It was sequence. I felt Ava's hand find mine under the desk. She whispered, "Dad, I am sorry." I wanted to tell her there was nothing to apologize for, but the word stuck because I had been waiting to hear that without knowing it. Dean Brooks printed the timeline and placed it beneath the blue acceptance letters. Then her assistant knocked once and opened the door. Her face was pale. "Dean Brooks, Vanessa Ellison is downstairs," she said. "She is with a man who says he represents the family, and they're asking why Mark brought the girls here." Dean Brooks looked at me, then at my daughters. "Before I bring them up," she said, "there's one more line in Vanessa's recorded call that none of you have heard yet." Dean Brooks did not bring Vanessa up immediately. She turned the speaker toward us and played the final excerpt first, just the room and my wife's voice filling it like smoke. Vanessa said, "The girls do not need to know I signed for them yet. By the time Ava understands, the transfer will already be handled, and Mark will look like the one making college impossible." The audio stopped. Ava covered her mouth, but no sound came out. Sophie stared at the table, at the 2 blue letters, as if the paper itself had finally told the truth. I felt something inside me go very still. Not angry, not numb, still, because there it was. Not a suspicion, not a misunderstanding. My wife had said it herself. Dean Brooks saved the recording, attached it to the compliance file, and then asked her assistant to bring Vanessa and Clint upstairs. When they walked in, Vanessa looked composed enough to scare me. Cream sweater, perfect hair, phone in hand, the same motherly face she had worn at every school conference. Clint Avery came behind her carrying a leather portfolio. Vanessa's eyes went straight to Ava and Sophie. "Girls, get your things. Your father should not have dragged you into this." Ava did not move. Sophie moved closer to me. That was the first visible crack in Vanessa's confidence. Clint stepped forward before she could recover. "Dean Brooks, I strongly advise you not to involve minors in a disputed family funding decision. Dean Brooks folded her hands. Mr. Avery, are you licensed to provide financial aid counseling in the state of Ohio? Clint smiled. That is not the issue. It is my first issue, she said. My second is why your fake support domain received documents from our portal before our office processed them. His smile thinned. Vanessa looked at him too quickly, and that quick look told me she had not known everything. For a moment, she was not the planner. She was the customer. Dean Brooks turned her monitor. On the screen was the access timeline. Vanessa's phone, our household tablet, Clint's Cincinnati Business Center address, and the fake domain. Under it sat the audio file marked Father Approval Pending. Clint reached for his portfolio. The father approval will clear this up. Dean Brooks said, Good. Let's clear it up. She played the file. My voice came through the speaker, but it was wrong in a way only my family would catch. It said, Yes, I approve. Use the account. Do what is best for the girls. Ava frowned immediately. That is Dad, she said, but that is not one sentence. Sophie nodded, crying again. That is from different messages. Dean Brooks opened 3 older voicemails from my phone backup. Each one Vanessa had saved through the carrier account. One was me approving Ava's senior trip form. One was me telling Vanessa to use savings for car tires. One was me saying we should do what was best for the girls after Sophie's math placement test. Clint had cut them into a sentence. Dean Brooks did not raise her voice. This is not approval. This is assembled audio. Vanessa whispered. Clint said it was just backup. Ava faced her mother. Backup for what? Stealing from us. Vanessa's face changed again. I was trying to save this family. Sophie answered before anyone else could. You told me to lie. That was the moment the room stopped belonging to Vanessa. Dean Brooks stamped the packet administrative freeze and placed it over the forged consent. Then she slid the blue acceptance letters toward Ava and Sophie, not toward me. Your enrollment files are protected pending review, she said. No outside advisor can speak for you now. Vanessa reached for Ava's letter, but Ava pulled it back. Dean Brooks picked up the office phone. I am referring this to University Compliance, the State Education Savings Administrator, and Campus Legal. Clint stood. You are making a mistake. Dean Brooks looked at him. No, the mistake was assuming these girls would never be asked directly. Then her assistant returned with one more printout and said, The holding account requested emergency release before 5 o'clock today. The words emergency release before 5 did more than interrupt the room. They turned the whole fraud into a clock. Dean Brooks took the printout, read it once, and walked to her computer without asking anyone to sit back down. Vanessa followed her with her eyes quiet. Clint checked his watch. That tiny movement told me the request was real, and it mattered. Dean Brooks called the State Education Savings Administrator while her assistant locked the office door, not dramatically, just enough to make clear that no one was leaving with those files unrecorded. She identified herself, gave Ava's student number, then said, I am reporting a suspected unauthorized education withdrawal involving forged student consent and assembled audio approval. Clint started talking over her, but Vanessa grabbed his sleeve. For the first time, she looked less like a woman caught and more like a woman realizing she had trusted the wrong thief. The administrator put Dean Brooks on hold for 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes felt longer than 12 years of overtime. Ava held her blue letter against her chest, but not like she had 2 nights before. This time, she held it like proof that she still existed outside her mother's plan. Sophie stood beside her, straight-backed, even with tears drying on her face. When the administrator returned, Dean Brooks repeated the dates, the fake domain, the Cincinnati access point, and the audio splice. Then she said the line I had been waiting to hear without knowing it. Yes, place the holding account under emergency dispute freeze. Clint's face emptied. Vanessa whispered, What does that mean? Dean Brooks looked at my daughters, not at Vanessa. It means no money moves today. Ava closed her eyes. Sophie let out a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. I put my hand over my mouth because if I spoke, everything I'd been holding together might fall apart in front of them. The freeze did not magically refill the account. It did not undo the lies or erase the messages or make Vanessa the mother my girls had believed she was that morning. but it stopped the drain before the final door closed. Dean Brooks printed 3 documents. One was the dispute freeze. One was the compliance referral. The last one had Ava's name across the top and the words Emergency Tuition Protection Review. This allows Brookhaven to protect her enrollment while the funds are investigated, she said. And Sophie will be flagged, so no release, deferment, or consent can be accepted without direct verification from her and a neutral guardian review. Neutral guardian. Vanessa flinched at those words. Ava did not. Sophie looked at me and asked, "Does that mean Mom cannot sign for me anymore?" Dean Brooks answered, "Not through this office." That was not revenge. It was better. It was a boundary with a receipt. Clint tried one last time to sound important, but campus legal arrived before he finished his sentence, and his voice shrank into careful explanations. Vanessa asked to speak to the girls alone. Ava said no. Sophie said, "You can write it down." Vanessa looked at me then, as if I had taught them that. I had not. She had. A week later, Brookhaven extended Ava's deposit deadline until the disputed fund were protected. 2 weeks after that, the holding account freeze turned into a formal recovery claim, and Avery Educational Planning disappeared from its mailbox suite. I never told the girls their mother lost everything, because that was not the story I wanted them to carry. I told them the truth in pieces they could survive. Their mother made choices. Adults were reviewing those choices. Their future was not responsible for paying the bill. On the first quiet Sunday after the hearing, I placed both blue acceptance letters back on the kitchen table. Beside them was Dean Brooks' approval notice. Emergency tuition protection approved. Ava touched the gold seal on her letter. Sophie slid hers next to it, corner to corner. No one said we were fine. We were not. But my daughters were looking at the table again without fear. And this time, no lie was sitting between us.